Hi folks, Dr. K here with today's Science Untangled topic on the periodic table. So, where did the periodic table come from and how is it used in chemistry? If we go back to ancient history, 4 or 5 elements, if you can call them that, were generally recognized, right? Earth, air, water, fire, and in some cases, metal as a fifth one. Later on, or closer to the current time, in antiquity, a number of actual elements had become known because they could be found as such. For instance, carbon and gold. Okay, not very reactive, so you could actually find them in nature. All right. Now, you have to keep one thing in mind in that context, and that's that practical experiments weren't that common early on, if done at all, because the focus was much more on philosophy, on thinking about things, such as Democritus did with his ideas about the atom. And if you keep that in context that way, the ideas that he came up with about the atom were actually quite amazing. And speaking of atom, that name atom actually comes from the Greek atomos, meaning indivisible, so the smallest possible particle. Now, of course, our idea of that smallest possible particle has changed over time, but the idea that there was a smallest particle, again, amazing. Later on, much closer to the current time, in the 17th and 18th centuries, scientists started finding out more, moving from alchemy to chemistry to science, leading to major progress in the 19th century. And that's when we run into big names like Lavoisier, Dalton, and Mendeleev, along with, of course, a number of other scientists. These three too did not do that work in a vacuum. And these efforts were then given a boost by the Industrial Revolution, with more equipment becoming available to do experiments with, as these were done at that time, and a major contribution coming from the discovery of electricity. We could now force reactions to go a certain way and figure out what that causes. Okay? By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing here and want to see more, then please like and subscribe and comment afterwards with feedback to help build the channel. Back to the periodic table. So, Mendeleev is known for coming up with the current layout of the periodic table. And by the way, the Russian version looks different from the Western one, as my Russian students have shown me. But he built on the work of various others who led the way in this. He, as I already said, he did not do this work in a vacuum. Okay? Now, his biggest contribution was figuring out the organization of the then known elements, which was about 45 when he did it, out of the 90 plus that we have in the shall we say, regular periodic table, excluding the F block. And he tried to organize them based on properties. What kind of matched? What seemed to show a trend? So, and one of the things that stood out for him was he was brave enough to leave gaps where he thought the system required it, because if he just kept going, then the properties didn't match up anymore. But him leaving gaps meant that others now had specific targets and could focus on specific research to fill those gaps, which led to the discovery of new elements. At the same time, roughly, physicists such as J.J. Thomson, Ernest Rutherford, and James Chadwick were responsible for the discovery of the electron, the proton, and the neutron. And the neutron came last because it was harder to detect, which helped to get a more complete picture of atomic structure and therefore elements. So, based on all these developments, the layout of the periodic table, based on both properties and atomic structure, has been worked out, and that's what we're using now. And we can now talk about the periodic table in terms of electrons, in terms of orbitals, energy levels or shells, isotopes and more, on top of properties, giving us a wealth of information of elements in one big chart. Okay, not charge, chart. That's it for this time. Thanks for watching. So, final question, and this might require a bit of research. What is the island of stability in the context of the periodic table? Like, subscribe, and comment to help me keep going, please. Thank you.